All right. Today I am here with Deborah Cates. What's your sign name?
Just
Oh,
Deb, fingerspell it.
Deb. Easy enough. Easy enough. So I wanted to talk with a variety of organizations and different areas of this field because interpreting, obviously, we interpret
Hmm.
everywhere
Right.
in every place, which includes education. So you are the president of NAIE, the National Association for Interpreters Within Education.
Hmm.
So we will talk about that. And I am here definitely as a learner because I don't know much about this area. So excited to learn about this today. So maybe just a short bio, whatever you feel like sharing.
Sure. My name is Deb. I've been interpreting since 2003. I mean, formally since 2003. I did a bachelor's degree at CSUN in Deaf Studies with an emphasis in interpreting. I graduated from CSUN, then got a master's degree in linguistics, decided I wanted to get a PhD after that. So I have a PhD in linguistics now. I'm just fascinated by language and structure. I love studying how the brain works and how language influences the brain. Just really love to study that stuff. My experience interpreting is primarily in education, K-12, but also at college level. So done a bunch of interpreting, and then I moved to Iowa. I mean, really, I live in Nebraska, but I work in Iowa. But I moved out here to work at the Iowa School for the Deaf in 2014. I've been there since then.
Mm.
I support interpreters who work in K-12 education. I am involved in the Task 12 project. I represent the state of Iowa on the board of the advisory board there. And I joined NAIE when it was founded in 2016. I was there at the very first conference when the president banged her gavel to establish the organization. And then in 2019, so it would have been just prior to COVID, I joined the board of NAIE. This was about 2019. And I started as a secretary, then served as vice president. Now I'm president.
Mm.
I teach, I mentor, I research, I train. I just do all of the things in education and educational interpreting related to deaf children. That's really my passion.
Nice.
It's my passion to support interpreters who work with deaf children to support their language development of the children in education. So that's me.
Exciting. I always tip my hat to folks, obviously, for one, that you've got a PhD and in linguistics. Oof, because it overwhelms me and I depend on folks like y'all to explain to me in layman's terms, just
Mhm.
in regular terms for me, so my I can understand linguistics, make it make sense to me. So I'm always thankful to folks who are got a PhD or any sort of linguistics because it helps people like me understand, just regular people understand, but because man, it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a regular person too. I'm
I
just
mean.
a nerd with a capital N. I mean, I find something that I am interested in and I just dive in.
But we need the nerds. Oh my gosh, to help me figure it out. But so I didn't realize NAIE was founded in 2016. That
Yep,
is not that long
2016. So
ago.
next year is our 10-year anniversary. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's not a long time ago. I'm
No, not very
surprised, but
long.
not surprised. I don't know. I thought it was longer, but it's a member-run organization. You provide CEUs. You've got different
Yep.
resources.
Yep.
Anything aiming to help educational interpreters
Yep.
in general.
Yep. That is right. So NAIE was founded originally by a steering committee that I think got together in 2014 and started to do some investigation about educational interpreting to figure out what the field looks like and what gaps there are in the field, what K-12 or educational interpreter, sorry, Stephen Fitzmaurice, one of my colleagues, likes to use the sign for school for educational interpreter, not the
Mm.
sign teach or educate. In any case, educational interpreters to figure out what their needs are, what gaps they have, what training is needed, and how there is disparity between what you do in K-12 and what you're trained to do, the ethical conflicts that arise when you're working in a K-12 setting versus how you're trained in community work. So they the steering committee was investigating what K-12 interpreting looks like, what the skills are that K-12 interpreters have, what training gaps they have, what things that they need for support, and what their work looks like every day.
Hmm.
So that steering committee led to the founding of NAIE. And our mission is to focus on K-12 interpreters and really to raise the bar of the work that K-12 interpreters do, because ultimately it impacts deaf children and it impacts the lives of deaf people. I mean, their experiences in K-12 are formative for what happens in the rest of their life. So I know a lot of people don't like working in K-12, and
Right.
they become skilled and they don't want to work in K-12 anymore, so they go work for the community. But really, interpreters in the community are
Right.
interpreting for the products of K-12 educational interpreting.
Right. All related.
So, yeah. So NAIE was founded to really standardize and raise the bar of educational interpreters' skills and requirements, and also to recognize, acknowledge, and honor the work that K-12 interpreters do. Because oftentimes people look at educational interpreters as paras. They do not see them as professionals, but legally, we're related service providers, which means, I mean, paraeducators are not. They're not related service providers. So there's kind of an imbalance in what we are versus how we're perceived. Did I freeze?
You're back now. We're good.
Okay, all right, where did I stop?
What is that? 6:20.
Okay, right. So paraeducators are not related service providers. So if you look at educational interpreters and label them as paras, that does not honor the unique skills, qualifications, and requirements they have that they bring to this educational experience. And I'm talking about qualified, skilled educational interpreters.
And I have very minimal experience within K-12, but I know, I suppose, enough, the general idea. The ethical situations may be different, boundaries may look different with clients and whatnot.
Mhm.
It's just another facet or area of interpreting that people learn about and get skilled at. Pay can look different, certification and credentialing can look different. So it feels like a no-brainer of course NAIE should be established probably many years ago. And I'm happy that it finally is and it has the support that it needs to support
Oh, yeah.
interpreters. RID or other organizations might not be able to cover all of these aspects in detail. So it's nice to have that niche group. Does
Mhm.
NAIE work closely with Boys Town EIPA folks? No? Separate.
Um, I wouldn't say work closely. We are completely separate, and I mean
Mm,
completely separate organizations.
mm.
Boys Town owns the EIPA test, and NAIE has an MOU with Boys Town. And I should add that I do consult with Boys Town about the EIPA test. Me personally, not part of my role in NAIE, those are separate. So it's interesting when I have different hats to wear in different situations, figuring out where I should participate in discussion, where I should recuse myself from discussion.
Hmm.
But that role that I have with Boys Town is phasing out. They have hired someone to do the EIPA data analysis, so I am passing off my responsibilities to that new analyst and won't be doing as much with them moving forward. But in any case, Boys Town owns the EIPA test. It was developed by Brenda Schick in the 1990s. And NAIE is a member organization that focuses on standards. We have written guidelines for interpreters in education that was published in 2019. We have a code of ethics for educational interpreters published in 2021. So for each of these publications, we do invite someone from Boys Town to support in and be involved in the work that we are doing. We did have someone from Boys Town on the Code of Ethics task force. We did have someone giving feedback, information, and support on the development of the guidelines, but the two organizations are completely, fully separate.
And maybe the same type of like RID and then has now CASLI as a testing unit
Hmm.
separate from that due to conflict of interest and stuff like that. I was
Right,
just going to
right.
ask about NAIE maybe forming some sort of certification test that would be separate from EIPA, or I don't know, will they kind of run in parallel with each other or?
Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah, I can talk about that. If you want more information, you can read our white paper called The Case for Certification. Wait, is that what it's called? Case for Certification. Yeah, I think it's called Case for Certification. But the whole point is what educational interpreters working in K-12 settings should have in terms of certification and what it should look like. It is not uh, paralleled with the interpreting field certification, but it's paralleled with other related service providers in education and what their certification and credentialing standards look like. So we look at audiologists, what training background certification, continuing education is required for them, and for speech language pathologists, what their
Mm,
training and certification, and so on and so forth. So we're
makes
looking at
sense.
all of that and looking at educational interpreters compared with these other groups of related service providers in terms of what those requirements are and why educational interpreters should have commensurate certification. So our guidelines in 2019 do state our recommended requirements for educational interpreters, and those are a bachelor's degree. We do prefer in the specialization of educational interpreting with the understanding that there are very few programs that actually offer a
Hmm.
bachelor's program in K-12 interpreting. Very, very, very few.
Yeah.
The EIPA passing the written test. So I don't know if you know, but EIPA does not require interpreters to take the written test. You can take the perform it
Mm,
without taking the written test. That is possible. So we would recommend that educational interpreters have passed the written test and achieve a 4.0 or higher on the EIPA performance test. And then also having professional development requirements for earning CEUs. So those were the recommendations that we made in our 2019 guidelines. So fast forward to today, and um, really, we just finished, I think maybe yesterday, we just closed the data collection period for our JTA, our job task analysis.
mm,
So I don't know if you saw, it was last week 2, 3 weeks ago, but
mm,
RID put out information that they will be doing a job task analysis for their SCL, the legal certification, and
mm.
they are starting that JTA process shortly. So we have been in the JTA process for educational interpreting, looking at what does the field look like, what are the job requirements, what are the knowledge and competencies called the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and
Energy?
abilities.
No.
Knowledge, skills, and abilities. So
Mm,
the KSAs, looking at what the KSAs are, figuring out what the KSAs are for educational interpreters. And so that's the process we've been going through right now is with data collection for the JTA. That is the first step in developing a certification program.
mm,
For certification programs, if you want accreditation from a national accrediting body, you must have separation between the member organization and the certification, the certifying body. Those have
mhm,
to be separate. So member organizations should have some involvement with the test, and the certification board should have, or I'm sorry, member organizations should have representation on the certification board. So there should be that collaboration between those entities, but functionally they should be separate and fully independent, making decisions autonomously from one another.
right.
So that process of the job task analysis, I mean, the goal eventually is to establish a certification for educational interpreters, yes. But what exactly that looks like, what exactly the requirements will be, have not been determined. We are still working with a consulting firm. We are still learning about the processes involved in all of this. So,
Exciting though.
yeah, yeah, it is. If we were to use the EIPA, obviously for accreditation, the certification has to be a pass-fail exam, and the EIPA is not a pass-fail test. So
Right.
there is that
Numbers.
barrier.
And I heard EIPA was supposed to be not an officially certification, but more of like an
Oh,
assessment tool,
right. That's
which
right.
is
It is a
helpful.
diagnostic
Mm,
assessment. Yes.
mm.
So the reason people take a certification exam like BEI, RID, a QUAST, if your state has that, the results feel really
Thin.
inconsequential. They don't really tell you anything. There's not a whole lot of feedback present in those certification exams because they're not designed to be diagnostic.
Right.
Whereas the EIPA was designed to be a diagnostic assessment.
Mm,
And so it was not designed for certification. I mean, that doesn't mean like what the test itself is measuring. It doesn't mean that it can't be a certification test. There's no reason it can't, other than, I mean, not a pass-fail test. But that is the reason that many states set up a level requirement for the EIPA.
mm.
And it used to be 3.0 or 3.5, but more and more states now are really raising the bar to that 4.0 or above.
Mhm.
But the EIPA itself is designed to give interpreters feedback on their strengths and weaknesses to diagnose their interpreting. And so that's one of the reasons why people often will take the test, even if they don't want to work in K-12. Did I freeze again?
Just a smidge. But yeah, people don't want to work K-12 is what you were saying.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
even if.
right. So if people do not want to work in K-12, they can still take the EIPA for feedback. It's
Right.
so valuable.
And maybe once NAIE's got a certification set, EIPA may be a great tool and an area for folks to get feedback on themselves to go take that certification, kind of like a way that they help
Yeah,
each other.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, you recommend, I was going to ask a bachelor's degree, a
yes.
BA just in general, or would you say a bachelor's in, it'd be nice, obviously, if it was some type of child development classes or
Mhm.
something like that related with
Yep.
that, or just in
Yep.
general?
So that is one of our standard recommendations is if there is a bachelor's degree, I mean, it can be in anything, but I mean, interpreting, I mean, anything
Yeah,
is significant.
everything.
Anything is valuable. Interpreters have to know stuff about things. They have to.
Hmm.
So if interpreters don't know stuff about things, then they can't interpret because the process of interpreting starts with comprehension and analysis, as our comprehension is the interpreters. If we don't comprehend the material, we can't interpret, right? So um, if you don't comprehend the language, if you don't comprehend the content, if you don't comprehend the power dynamics that are present
Mm-hmm.
in the room, if you don't comprehend the cultural diversity that is present in, in an interpretive interaction, so that our knowledge is such an important part of that process. So I mean, yes, I have a PhD, yes, but I am not an academic snob, right? I don't think that you have to have a
Right.
degree.
That's not just the one way to learn, for sure.
Right. No, not at all. But as a way of documenting what you have learned for educational interpreters, oftentimes pay is
Yes.
reliant on your education background, your
Yes.
degrees. So if there's a degree requirement, again, that's that related service provider thing. Related service providers need to have degrees in their fields. For SLPs have to have MAs, audiologists have to have an AUD, which is a doctorate degree, AUD degree. Um, orientation, sorry, OTs, PTs are
Hmm.
required to have degrees. So
Right. Be on par with that group of folks who are providing services. Yeah.
right. So that is part of it too, is how formal education is viewed in the education system. So, I mean, in my opinion, sure, it could be a degree in just about anything, but there is an importance for interpreters in education to understand language acquisition because so many deaf children work with interpreters. I mean, the deaf children are language deprived interpreters are working with deaf children with language deprivation. And so understanding the time course of language acquisition and how acquisition happens, child development, what that looks like, how
Mhm.
children gain independence as they grow and what that looks like. Particularly interpreters who are working in rural areas where there may be one interpreter for a
Yep.
child through their entire education. It's not
Mhm.
ideal.
Right. Pros,
It's
cons.
not
Yeah.
ideal, right? I mean, but ideal world and real world, right? Not always the same thing. But yes, we would recommend a BA in addition to those other things.
Which ties to, yeah, the legitimacy of the work, the profession, more money. And that
Yes.
brings me to the point of like you're saying that there's a start and you're setting up a certification process. What does that look like? Can folks get involved? Can people help provide information? You're collecting data right now, or that's closed or what?
So the JTA is a survey.
Hmm.
So we started with a group, if I back up a little bit, we started with a group of subject matter experts or SMEs. And so we started with a group of SMEs, and these are individuals involved in education who have knowledge of child development, child psychology, educational interpreting, teaching interpreting. So people with that kind of background knowledge and expertise in the field. And we had meetings with the SMEs to develop a set of indicators that they feel are those core KSA, those core knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then that went to a company who drafted the survey, and then the survey was then distributed for interpreters who are currently working in education to fill out that survey. So
Mm,
we've been collecting that data. Yeah, we've
mm.
been. And I think, again, it was either today, I think today was the last day for that data
Okay.
collection.
So by the time this may be released, that obviously that'll be done, but you're then will be looking at this data and figuring out next steps from there.
Yes. Yes. So we hired a company to do in-depth analysis of the data that is collected, and they will give us a report as a result of this JTA. And then once we have that report, then we'll figure out our next steps.
That's exciting.
Hmm.
Um, Let me see here. So often the rhetoric or mindset in terms of educational interpreters, I mean, for lack of better words or sign, is that they're less than, or that I don't want to do K-12. I'd rather go do this over here. What does NAIE do to challenge that or to kind of challenge that type of talk and
Hmm.
discussion? Because
Hmm.
I mean, I know all the respect goes to any and all interpreters. These folks are not less than or less skilled or anything like that. So I'm just curious what you've
Hmm.
published or what do you folks talk about to kind of challenge that mindset or that view?
Hmm. Uh,
Hmm.
so let's think about where that comes from.
Yeah,
So I remember when I was in school, learning the profession of interpreting, it was not overtly stated, but it was certainly implied
yes, yes.
that you start working in K-12. And when you become a real interpreter, then you get certified and then you work in the community, and that's the real interpreter work.
Right.
So that was kind of the implicit message. Um, a part of that I think is related to compensation pay. Um,
Yeah.
Educational interpreters are not paid commensurate with other related service providers. They're not paid commensurate with freelance or private practice interpreters. So that is part of it, I think, is the pay. So many
Big part.
interpreters who are very skilled, why would they work in a job where they have to scrimp and save and pinch, whereas they have opportunities in the community for more flexibility, more control over their schedule, the ability to work with a wider variety of consumers. They get more recognition for their work
Mm-hmm.
from our interpreting profession, right? Acknowledging those folks. So why would they want to work in K-12?
Mm-hmm.
So in K-12, I tend to find two kinds of interpreters. Interpreters who are passionate and dedicated to education.
Mm-hmm. That's key.
They are dedicated to working with students, and those interpreters are amazing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they are rock star. amazing interpreters. Or you find interpreters who are struggling to find interpreting work in the general community because if they show up to interpret for an adult who is able to look at them and say, I don't want you, you're not skilled enough, right? Education is a safer place to
Mm,
be.
quote unquote.
I mean, or a third, to be fair, a third category of interpreters would be newer interpreters who are still trying to get their feet wet in the profession and figure out where they want to go
Mhm.
in their careers. So most freelance or community interpreters out there don't often see educational interpreters.
Right.
I mean, they don't. Well, we're not paid a ton, which means we're not likely to go to your conferences. Those are expensive. And maybe we're working at K-12. We're not RID certified. We don't have to earn RID CEUs, so we don't need to go to RID approved workshops or conferences or
And the workshop content may not even match.
oh,
Right.
right. The topics, the content doesn't fit our needs. And so that is one thing that NAIE has been doing since its inception. We are committed to
Mm,
finding professional development content that is really fitting the needs of K-12 interpreters. And that has been very important for NAIE as an organization. I mean, very, very important to provide those professional development opportunities for educational interpreters. And so part of it is I think a lot of interpreters who work in the community don't really see educational interpreters, so they really don't know our skills
hmm
and what we do on a daily basis. I think part of it is the job itself. Um, how during interpreter training, the conception we're given of the role of an interpreter, the responsibilities of an interpreter, what the job looks like. When you take that training and you put it in a K-12 environment, there's a conflict, especially if you're talking about a deaf child with language deprivation.
hmm
So a deaf child who is language deprived,
There's
oh
so many
man, like
layers
that, I mean, that community model
out the
is
window.
totally, oh yeah, fails. It fails.
hmm
So, I mean, that's a part of it too, is the work itself looks so fundamentally different. And also when you work for a school, you're a school employee. So even, I mean, freelance or private practice interpreters who have a contract to go work in K-12, they are still an adult in a K-12 environment, which means during preschool circle time, when everybody is going around the circle and talking about their weekend and taking turns, and it gets to you, they'll ask you as the interpreter, "How was your weekend?" And I mean, what do? The interpreter did not have a weekend. I mean, like,
Right.
right, right. So
Mm.
even that type of situation, when you are interpreting for a child who is language deprived, and really this happens frequently in elementary school, where a child is in a mainstream classroom, really oftentimes isolated, the only deaf child in a mainstream classroom. They may not have the background knowledge, the language abilities to follow along. So if I, as an interpreter, just kind of do this rote interpreting mode during a phonics lesson,
Mm.
I mean, what?
Right.
How? I mean, how do you interpret a phonics lesson?
Bless. Good luck.
Right, right.
Ugh.
I mean, it doesn't even
Mm.
fit. You're not talking about a child who's profoundly deaf, who doesn't use spoken English, and you're interpreting I mean, phonics aren't gonna do any good.
Right.
So the question becomes then, as an interpreter, what do I do? I have to understand reading development. I
The whole
have to
picture.
understand that the teacher's focus is on phonics and articulation. I need to be able to see what they're talking about as a sound basis and see where can I find that in print. And then I emphasize the letters. I emphasize fingerspelling. I emphasize syllable segmentation. I emphasize rhythm. I come up with ASL rhythms.
Mm,
And it's, I mean, wow, that's a really heavy
complicated.
load. It is. It is very complicated. And that's just one tiny example of
Right.
one tiny part of one day,
Add the layers. Ugh.
right?
E-
So if I have that training as an interpreter with my understanding of what the role and responsibilities of an interpreter are, and I show up, right? I think someone talks, I sign, someone signs, I talk. That's my role. That's what I do. I don't tell the teacher what to do. I don't tell the student what to do. Student doesn't tell me what to do. I show up, I interpret, I leave.
Hmm.
Doesn't work in a K-12 educational context. So there's, I think, a complete misunderstanding of what that role looks like in education. So I think that that's a part of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you say the misunderstanding of the role
Yeah,
because misunderstanding in terms of what skill means and what skill
yeah,
looks like, because you're applying that meaning of what skill is for all interpreters, and that's just not the case of how it works. And I've learned through the years that it
yeah,
took me a while, but oh,
yeah.
the what actual skill is. Make me take the EIPA? I'm not sure how I'm going to do actually. And I interpret for deaf folks with PhDs, and that's a certain skill I've gained of being able to work into English for them. But then you put me in front of a kid, and I'm not sure
Yep.
I'll make sense. So I've stopped putting weight on, okay, well, this over here is better and we're better, and that's more skilled because
Right.
really switch places and go in any of those settings and see how y'all do.
Oh yeah.
Because I doubt we're all able to be highly skilled in all of these areas at
Oh yeah.
all. So I love that NAIE is setting, has a national organization that they hopefully a certification will come from that. And then it will feel as though it's on par to an NIC or like RID and NAIE. And that's like the goal of
Mhm.
your educational interpretation is to get that top level national certification. And I hope that becomes the standard. And I feel that this conversation, the type of conversation we're having, is happening more and more in the last, what, handful of
Yes.
years?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You froze for me. You said, so the last thing I saw was I feel.
Yeah, I feel like the interpreters and worth, their skill in educational interpreting is becoming a more attended conversation in the last handful of years or so.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of that too is
Research.
research, I think
Yes.
too, that we are recognizing language deprivation in research. And I mean, it was only labeled in what, 2014?
Mm, right. So it's finally talked about, and we're like, oh shit, oh, this is happening. We should,
Yeah.
we're
It-
seeing it.
yeah. I mean, it's been happening, but now
Hmm.
we have a label for it. So that's a part of it too, is look at these children who have language deprivation. And then you put them in a hearing mainstream public school with an interpreter who may be ASL fluent, who may not be, who may have just been learning ASL for 2, 3, 4 years. And now you stick them in front of a child who has no formal language as the only model for that child. I mean,
Yeah.
if they're lucky, the child will have a teacher of the deaf who can sign, if they're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Oh,
heavy.
we're learning a lot
That
now.
is
Yeah.
heavy. And I mean, truly, my life is, I mean, just a constant, this constant frustration, this constant angst, that the interpreter should not be there. Many of those children should not be there in those educational programs. That is not a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment for those children. It's
Hmm.
not.
Yeah.
And I had to recognize that. And I have to recognize that the system is not designed for those deaf children. It's
Right.
not.
Right.
But at the same time, I realize that those children who are in school right now, they don't have time for our systems to
Mm,
change.
right.
They
Do what
don't
we
have
can
time
right now.
for, right, right. So my research then is focused on educational interpreters and what their skill levels are, what that looks like, what does it actually mean? And to try then to help people who are in those positions of authority to make decisions about interpreter qualifications and certification, to help them understand that what is actually happening and to say you say that this is acceptable, but it's not acceptable. So my research then focuses on interpreter skills and how interpreter skill influences student learning, as well as um, ways to get more deaf adults into the classroom.
Mm.
And so in Iowa, we have a deaf language coach program that I set up 4 years ago, and I've been collecting data. And the deaf language coaches have been providing support for those students, and we have seen their language thrive. We have seen them successfully start to acquire ASL, and it's not ideal, but those children don't have time for the system to figure itself out.
Hmm.
I mean, and to change to meet their needs.
So NAIE's thoughts or approach or areas of discussion for the, as you said, those third group of interpreters that may be in K-12. You just graduated in ITP and you go interpret. I did it years
Oh,
ago.
me too. Me
I
too.
know.
Me too.
And and I mean, luckily, there's been a lot more discussion of words of caution. Don't go right after graduation. K-12 and educational interpreting is a space for highly skilled interpreters because of these kids. And we've kind of talked to ITP students more so about it. Now students graduate in ITP and are unsure where to go and what to
Mm-hmm.
do. And
Mm-hmm.
my word of advice is always right. What's ideal, or like we said, what's reality here? So I'm just curious, what advice or what words do you guys say to
Mm-hmm.
recent grads? Like, don't you dare go into K-12, or where should they fit in?
Yeah. So recognizing that this is a very heavy topic,
Mhm.
they need to have a support system in place. So during your interpreting program, you have exposure to deaf teachers, deaf language models, the deaf community. There are a variety of things that are built into the program. Don't lose those contacts, those connections when you go into K-12. Continue to rely on the deaf community. And mentor, have a mentor.
Yeah.
Um, and be very, very cautious and very thorough in your investigation about what the student's needs are, and have um, a very open self-assessment about what your skills are. There are many deaf students in the mainstream who use interpreters more as a visual support because they are relying more on spoken English and listening to as much spoken English as they can, but they may miss a word or they may not know a concept or something. So if they're using a spoken English as their primary access point, and you are working as an educational interpreter, as a brand new baby interpreter, I mean, work with those students. It gives you an opportunity to actually do the work of interpreting, to engage in the process of analyzing an incoming message and putting it out into ASL. But you'd be working with a student who is not fully reliant on your skills as an interpreter.
And I always tell students, yeah, if you're going to go into K-12 immediately, find a deaf ed program that has 10 deaf kids, 15 interpreters.
Mm.
Join.
Oh, that's
I
hard to
know.
find.
I know. Hopefully, there's one at least in every state or at least in one area, but at least find where there's other
Mhm.
interpreters versus being going at it alone and you and
Hmm.
one deaf kid
Yes,
by
don't work
yourself.
alone. Right.
Yes. Find someone you can have support around you, as you said, a mentor, because you may be alone otherwise.
Yeah, and understanding the education system, understanding IEPs, and speak up.
Yeah.
Speak up. The worst thing that's going to happen to you is you lose your job. That is the worst thing that's going to happen. And what
For
happens if you
sure.
lose your job? Go find another job somewhere else. I mean, there is such a shortage of interpreters. Schools are desperate for educational interpreters. There are vacancies everywhere for educational interpreters. So go get yourself fired.
Fight for the kids. Yeah, and their rights. I like that. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, make that situation, work yourself out of a job because that child goes to a program that's a better fit for their needs. So make it so that you're not even needed anymore.
I like that.
I mean, that's what's the worst that's going to happen, right? You get fired, you lose your job. That's
Well, yeah, and that leads me to my
that's it.
next question of we've had a few people who've asked me, and I'm sure you have too, of NAE has resources of um, the role of interpreters, aka I'm not a paraprofessional, I'm
Hmm.
not this, I'm not a language facilitator. Do you have language or documents someone that people
Oh
can
yeah.
share with their admin? Because often
Oh
folks
yeah.
kind of get stuck in terms of the verbiage of how to explain their role to the school systems. Do you have that stuff?
Oh yeah, the guidelines. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, our guidelines do that. They're available on our website.
Right, great. I mean, like the CPC or ethics
Uh-huh.
for
We have code of ethics.
nice that they can show.
Yep, it's on our website.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you also have resources about like IEP meetings? How and what interpreters should do, not as an interpreter in the meeting, but as a participant, as a service
Hmm.
provider? Do you have advice or information on that?
So there is some information on our website in the resources page. And there are links to a variety of different resources. And I think we have in our webinar archive, we have a webinar about IEPs, I think.
Because people sometimes feel alone and stuck. I feel like of like, what do I say or how do I approach this?
Hmm.
So here's some resources, folks. Check out the website. Shifting gears here, I doubt it, but does each state or how many states have people like you or, like the deaf language mentor program or mentorship programs for all of this type of stuff? Is Iowa unique in that way?
So other states have people in positions that are similar to mine. Um, so states like Wisconsin, they have Keith Buracek. He is the former vice president of NAIE, and his position in Wisconsin is very similar to my position in Iowa. North Carolina has Antoine Campbell, and he works for, I believe, the Department of Public Instruction in North Carolina. And he is on the RAD board. I think he's one of the region reps on the RAD board. I don't remember which region number, but he's a region rep. Trying to think of other states that have similar positions. So other states have different types of programs that provide support and mentoring. The Task 12 project, so any state that is involved in Task 12 has access to Task 12's IMET program, and that has training and support for interpreters. But I'm trying to think of other states where there's a position similar to mine. Mm. I mean, yeah, I'm not the only one. There are not many out there, but I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I just feel like people feel alone out there. They aren't sure where to turn, who to ask.
Yeah.
And people have given me feedback about the podcast of wanting more episodes about educational interpreting. I'm like, I'm not someone who would focus directly on that, but like, oh gosh, we need more of these conversations about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and really, if those folks aren't members of NAIE, they should
Yes,
consider being members.
seriously.
It's $75 for a year,
Resources.
$75. Oh yeah. And I mean the resources, yes, but we provide CEUs for free for our
Mm.
members. So there's a minimum of 1.2 CEUs available every year. And I know May 17th, I don't know when this podcast is going to be airing, but May 17th, I am co-teaching a workshop with our treasurer Kaylin Beck. And we are talking about the RID, Code of Professional Conduct, and NAIE, Educational Interpreter Code of Ethics, and doing a crosswalk of those two.
And you all have a national conference every 2 years?
Ish, yes. So it has been in the past every 2 years, but last year we decided to hold off and not do one 2 years, but at 3 years because
Mm,
next year is our 10-year anniversary.
20, right.
hmm
2026.
So very soon we will announce where and the specific dates very soon.
Nice. And right now, I know ITPs already have their own struggles in general.
hmm
Um, we we don't have any ITPs that are mainly directly specifically for, I mean, legal or medical, or educational. I'm not sure that we have that, but I'm wondering, oh, we do?
So there's a couple
Mm, mm.
educational interpreter programs. Very few.
Okay.
Very few.
And I was just wondering if an ITP could have a regular interpreter training program with an emphasis of education or,
hmm
yeah,
I I mean I mean no, I how many interpreters know when they go into an interpreting program which specialization they want to have
right.
in
How do
interpreting,
they?
right? I mean, I
Yeah.
in my perfect world, interpreting would require a master's degree. There would be a BA as a language degree,
Mm,
and then a master's is the
specialize.
interpreting skills
Yeah.
portion. But I mean, suppose someone goes into an interpreting program knowing that they want to do educational interpreting. And well, if that's the case, they could double major, or they could minor, or they could major in interpreting and they could minor in education. They could minor in child development. They could minor in linguistics. So, they could do something like that, or they could take coursework in different specializations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they could do that.
Perfect world. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Perfect world.
I feel like there's so many struggles that have come up. We're still trying to get our feet firmly planted so we can get to
Yes.
that ideal world.
Yes. And really learn how to study
Mm,
because I mean, with the internet, I mean, I remember in my interpreting program watching VHS tapes
same. Yep.
in the library.
Yep.
And now, I mean, with internet resources, man, you
Everything.
just got everything at your fingertips. There are so many resources. You can learn about literally anything,
Yep.
anything. So, do you really need a formal education? Not necessarily, right? But learn how to study. Learn how to study, learn how to read, learn how to ask questions. Um, Find a cute guy and ask him about his sports obsession.
Hmm.
I mean,
I like that. Yeah. I mean, that's all the questions I have on the sheet here about NAIE, but I guess I'm wondering more. Um, you're publishing a book related with educational interpreting?
I will be, yes.
Will. Okay.
Yes. So I am it's with the editor right now, doing review and feedback on the chapters and stuff, but yes.
That's awesome. And then that's just about in general educational interpreting, or is it more of a skill-based discussion or all of it?
Yep, it's really looking holistically at the system of educational interpreting, all of the things that we learn after we go to work in education,
Mm.
all of those aha moments that we have after the
Yeesh.
fact,
Yes.
the things we wish we knew before. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, it covers all of those topics.
that's great. What else would we want to add? Anything else you want to add? You do so many things and wear so many hats in terms of mentorship and research. And what else would you want folks to take away from this or know? Or what little nugget would you like to leave folks with in terms of what else you'd like to say? I'm trying to think. I'm sure you have so many things you could talk about.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, educational interpreting is hard.
yeah.
It's hard, but it's worth it. It's worth it. You are impacting a child's life.
Hmm.
I mean, like in perpetuity. I mean, that is both good and bad, pros and cons.
Hmm.
Um, but don't just think about educational interpreting as this insignificant, easy entry point into the field. Um, don't think about it like that. Think about the child. Think about their right to learn, their right to have information, their right to be able to make autonomous decisions. Um, I mean, you have that opportunity working in education. When you work in freelance, often you will show up, you interpret, and you leave, and you don't know
Right.
what happens after that. You don't see a result of the work. And I remember many years ago when I was working in a middle school as K-12 interpreter, and I was working with a deaf student who was a pretty fluent signer in an art class. And the teacher assigned for the students assigned them to select a famous artist, a sculptor or painter or photographer, to pick one artist and talk about their work in a paper for the class. So I asked the teacher, well, what about deaf artists? The teacher thought that was a great idea. And so I remember sitting at the computer with the student, going through images from different deaf artists and showing pictures of their work. And the child saw that painting Family Dog. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah,
seen it.
I think so, yeah.
Um, and I mean, their eyes
Mm.
just lit up. I mean, it made an instant connection and
Mm.
started talking about their experiences related to that painting. I mean, they got it. They got that painting. And I mean, I have chills just thinking about that moment.
Mm.
Um, but that moment was like, I just had an opportunity to expose this child to their own culture.
The whole world opened up.
I mean,
Mm.
that is a powerful, powerful opportunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
And I've trying to think of how to articulate this, but it all's kind of tied together. Okay, so I did graduate and I did do the thing. I went right into K-12 interpreting for 2.5, 3 years or so. Um, it felt familiar because, I was what, 22,
yeah, yeah, right,
just in school in
right.
K-12 myself. So it was a comfortable space. I knew what to expect in terms of what work would be. But the student happened to move and I didn't interpret in K-12 anymore. Years passed and I'm like, I don't ever want to do K-12. I felt like I was fighting the system and whatnot. The kids I
Hmm.
loved, the language
Hmm.
aspect of I loved, the environment I loved, but the system, I didn't want to fight that system anymore.
Oh, yeah, you
Yes.
can, yeah,
And looking
burn
back,
out
I
on that.
realize now actually that I it required me to be vulnerable. I'm a heart heavy person. And that opened up many, many layers of
Hmm.
vulnerability for me working in that space.
Hmm.
And it was really, really hard at 22 to deal with many, many things that I didn't know how to deal with. And so then I kind of went to the extreme end of the other end of let's go to freelance and let's kind of detach. I can handle these things emotionally over here. I'm just now able
Hmm.
processing this and saying this out loud. But obviously, it's still a vulnerable job. But K-12 had an extra layer. Making me tear up at this moment, thinking about how that layer of love
Hmm.
and I don't think I emotionally was able to handle it in many
Yeah.
situations. Well, it's why I honor and applaud and say you have invested your heart and life in this K-12 area who work in that area. And that's just me. And I'm not saying everyone's the same, but that's just me.
Well, yes, and but that's not a negative thing. I mean, there is that tendency to overhelp because we
Right.
are soft-hearted and we just want to help, so we go overboard on that in
And at
the
22, I'm
helping and
sure I did.
enabling.
I'm sure I
Yes,
did.
of course. But think about language deprivation. It's a trauma,
Yeah.
and children with trauma need connection. They need support. They need stability. They need dependability. So there are all of these things that interpreters provide.
That's heavy. That's a lot.
And sometimes educational interpreting is not, oh, the teacher said we have a test next week, Tuesday.
Right.
Sometimes educational interpreting is recognizing, something's going on,
Hmm.
something's up.
And that's just the deaf kid you're looking at. You have 30 other students there you care
Oh,
about most of the
yes.
time.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Mhm.
yes. And yeah, so there was one student I interpreted with who was a very, very talented artist and took every art class they possibly could. And I remember sitting at the table, oftentimes doing art alongside with the students and interpreting conversation, and had an opportunity to just listen to some of the students and see how rare that is that the the students have an opportunity to have an adult there in the school environment who's really listening to them because the other adults don't have time. So being able to sit there and be able to notice those students and listen to those students um, and as an adult in that environment, having those responsibilities, um, if I notice, a student is talking about drugs, yeah, I'm gonna tell someone. If I notice
Right.
something is off, uh, that something seems not right, interpreters oftentimes are the first people to notice child abuse.
Hmm.
And I sign abuse, like the sign for beat, but really just any kind of child abuse at all,
Right.
because they can see changes in the students because they notice them because they see them.
Yeah.
So yes, there is a lot of heart, there is a lot of emotional investment, and
Mm,
yeah,
kudos.
it is. And so setting those boundaries, figuring out those boundaries, it's hard.
Yeah.
And the
And I'm
pay's lousy,
happy.
of course.
Right. I wish the pay was on par with, I know.
Yeah, and then you have a supervisor who has no idea what you're doing.
The pay should match the investment, the heart, the emotional aspect. It should be on par to that. Really, I mean, I'm still floored by that of that it's not. Um, ugh.
Yep. But again, that's, the the skilled educational interpreters, the ones who are out there really who know the work.
And I'm happy these type of conversations are happening more and more. The
Me too.
acknowledgement of the folks in these fields that it has been changing. At least it did in my years of this career. Um, but yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Are there any last tidbits or any last things you want to say before we wrap up? become an NAIE member.
Yes.
Advantage of those resources.
Yes. And CEUs. Fun.
Seriously. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy you came out and chatted. A lot of people will tune in and benefit from this information. Yeah, a conversation that's much needed and needed more and more. At
Mhm.
the end, I like to ask folks to highlight and talk about a deaf organization or deaf nonprofit or a deaf business. So, who do you want to highlight?
Sure. So I picked one of NAIE's collaborators, Diversity Academy for Interpreters, DAI. We have been, let me think now, the last couple of years, we've really been focusing on the structure of NAIE as an organization and recognizing how our field being predominantly white, how that white privilege, that white lens, that perspective has really impacted the interpreting field, how it has impacted students, because many of our students are not white. They are from different cultures, they have different backgrounds, they have different languages. And so the importance of not just um, accepting diversity, but really designing for diversity and realizing that in our organization, some of our processes were not really diversity friendly, shall we say, that there were barriers within the systems that we had constructed in our organization and how we were functioning and how we were operating. And so we were called out on that a couple of years ago and really took that to heart. So we decided to start to unpack as a board our biases, our looking at our organization's bylaws, procedures, policies, how we recruit and elect board members. So really just sitting down and doing a detailed review of our foundations. And we have partnered with Diversity Academy in this process. They have provided training, support, mentoring. Dr. Gray is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful individual. And Diversity Academy has really been instrumental in helping NAIE. And so we appreciate very much our partnership with them. And so that is why I have chosen to spotlight their organization.
Nice. Yeah, I remember their name. I was wondering if someone would bring them up. I'm happy you did. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Deb, for coming, talking about these things. I hope this is filling someone's cup of what they needed to hear in terms of educational interpreting for now. Hopefully, more to come. But yeah, I appreciate your time and your wisdom and excited to see your research, your book. I'm sure everyone's ready for all of that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.